So I want to introduce you to my grandmother, Shirley. Now, my gram, in this picture, she's 80 years old. She's all dressed up. She's got her lipstick on. This is at her 80th birthday party. She's ready to go, but don't let the little old lady fool you. My grandmother did not take grief from anyone. And I know that because, listen, man, I grew up in like an Irish Catholic family. My grandmother had like 8 kids, lived in a house that was probably no bigger than the condo that my husband and I live in by ourselves today, raising like 8 kids. And so I had a metric F ton of cousins running around. And every day after school growing up, we would be babysat by my grandmother. And every day during the summer, we'd be babysat by my grandmother. And she didn't take grief from not a single one of us. Now, my gram did not have some of the best habits in the world. In fact, she would sit there in the kitchen all day when she was babysitting us, having her cigarettes, like chain smoking all day, doing her word puzzles, having the occasional whiskey or beer. She was not the healthiest woman in the world. And, you know, sadly, about 9 years ago in July 2011, my grandmother passed away. But listen, man, not without living a life well lived. And I gotta tell you this one story about my grandmother. Here's why I bring her up. So my grandmother actually, she smoked a lot. She did. My grandmother loved her cigarettes, and any time that she was in an old folks home, like towards the end of her life, and anytime one of the grandkids went to visit in the old folks home, she always tried to get us to sneak her in a smidgen, which was her code word for whiskey, because she still wanted to partake. Now, my grandmother, after she entered the old folks home, she actually lost her leg from smoking, by the way. So she smoked a lot and it had detrimental effects on her life. But even after she lost her leg, she still wanted to keep smoking. She still wanted to do her thing. It was one of her simple pleasures in life was to smoke her Marlboros. And so one of the things that happened after she entered the old folks home is a couple years after she started living in the home is that they actually outlawed smoking. They outlawed smoking for all residents and all staff members, but my grandmother was not one to take this lying down, even though she couldn't even walk. She was in a wheelchair at this point because she lost her leg. She didn't take this lying down. What she did is she found a friend who was also a smoker. They formed a little committee of sorts. They found representation. They found like an ombudsman to hear their grievances and represent what they wanted. And she fought the smoking ban at the nursing home and actually won. She won. And so when none of the residents of the nursing home and none of the staff members of the nursing home could smoke, they still had to take my gram outside several times a day so she could have her cigarettes. Now, there was a big debate in my family about whether or not to continue to supply my grandmother with this thing that wasn't actually good for her. But listen, man, I always came down on the side of she has lived a long life. She has lived a much harder life than I have ever, even thought about living, even with, my life hasn't been perfect. But dude, my grandmother had it much harder than me. She should be able to smoke if she wants to, because with age comes wisdom. I'm sorry. I think I've only recently started to understand the whole idea of wisdom. Listen, I'm almost 40 years old. I'm absolutely positive I'm probably going through a midlife crisis right now. I basically skewered my career to complain on YouTube all day, which is fine, and it's actually working out quite brilliantly. But listen, I look back at who I was like 20 years ago, and I'm like, dude, like, you didn't know anything. You thought you were the smartest person in the world. You didn't know anything. And I frankly, I had this conversation with Hunter Avallone the other day when I was on his channel, and he said, I wonder what would have happened if I, had started my channel later at a different age. I thank my lucky stars that I came to something like this later in life, because, dude, if I had had a YouTube channel when I was like 25, I would have said some stupid things. I really would have. And so my general philosophy around stuff like this is that senior citizens are elders. Dude, they're not stupid and they're not children. They've lived enough life to know exactly what they want to do. And if they make a decision that is not in their best interest, then you should let them do it, because it gives them a simple pleasure of life. Cigarettes gave my grandmother that simple pleasure. Her smidgens of whiskey gave her that simple pleasure. If that's what she wanted to do, if that's the decision she made after she was 80 years old, dude, I'm not going to stop her. That's her choice, and she's lived a long life, and so far as I'm concerned, she's earned it. Now, I tell you this story because I saw this story yesterday, and It instantly brought a smile to my face and instantly reminded me of the Spitfire that was my grandmother. Long-term care residents in Greeley, which is in Colorado, protest COVID-19 restrictions. So we're going to read about what these senior citizens did to take back their rights and live their life the way they want to for whatever time they have left. And we're going to talk about what that means. But listen, folks, I got to do my quick plug here because I'm really trying to get to 100,000 subscribers before Election Day. I'm absolutely on track to do it, but yesterday I posted a video that pissed a lot of people off and I lost probably a couple hundred subs, and so I'm a little bit off track right now, so we need to get back on track. If you've watched my videos before but are not subscribed yet, but you kind of dig the content I'm pulling out, or even if you love to hate watch me, either way is fine, I hope you'll consider subscribing to the channel, turning on notifications, leaving a comment, letting me know what you think, sharing it out to your friends so I can grow, because YouTube has basically quarantined my channel to subscribers at this point, like the heels that they are. So it really helps me out, and hopefully I can reach my 100,000 sub goal by Election Day. I think I'm going to do it, but dude, it's going to be close. Let me tell you what, YouTube's messing with me like no one else. Stick it to YouTube by subscribing and letting them know that you're the boss of the content that you will consider. Let's take a look at this article and find out what these nursing home residents did. Residents at nursing and rehabilitation facility in Greeley organized a protest against Colorado's coronavirus restrictions. On Thursday, around 20 residents gathered outside Fair Acres Manor, many in wheelchairs, holding signs that read, "Rather die from COVID than loneliness," and "Prisoners in our own home," and "Give us freedom." Ben Gonzalez, an assistant administrator at Fair Acres Manor, said the residents are upset about the COVID-19 restrictions put in place by the state health department. They want to be able to hug their grandchildren. They want to be able to hold hands with their loved ones. You can see they're all lined up in their wheelchairs and they're holding their signs like, dude, you don't mess with old people. Do not mess with them. Do not piss off old people, because they know the things that really matter in life. And the things that really matter are family, are being around your loved ones, are those simple pleasures like my grandmother having your cigarettes. These are the things that you care about when you get older, are the simple pleasures, the not freaking being locked down just in case you might get sick. And older people understand this. I think they understand a lot better than a lot of the younger people that are like afraid and wearing masks, or like several layers of masks, and like aren't leaving their home because they're afraid they're gonna die. Like, these guys know that they don't have long left on this earth, and they want to live the way they want to live. Gonzalez said the residents are able to see visitors, but they have to stay 6 feet apart and can't have any physical contact. Gonzalez told CBS 4 the Fair Acres Residents Council wanted their voice to be heard and organized the protest on 16th Street. "We used to be lucky here at Fair Acres to show each other what we mean to one another, and we can't do that anymore," says Resident Council President Sharon Peterson, who is 75. Fair Acres follows the rules, and with that, we think they would keep us safe while being able to see our families again. We did this because one thing we have to look forward to is a simple hug. It gives us meaning. You can see one lady's here that says, "Would rather die from COVID than loneliness." Good for them, man. Staff members were able to keep the staff members were there during the protest to support the residents and keep them safe. We want them to know that their voices matter. I mean, I wonder if the staff at this nursing home are just as fed up with all the restrictions as the residents are. I'm sure many people are fed up right now because it's gone on forever. Guys, this was supposed to be 15 days. This was supposed to be 15 days. I was back in flipping March. It has been forever and a day. People can't live like this. Gonzalez says staff members were all wearing masks and eye protection as required, and they made sure the residents wore masks and stayed 6 feet apart. Fair Acres needs to be commended on how well they have cared for all of us, but it's time to have our voices heard. Man, I say good for them. Good for them for standing up for what they believe in. Good for them for trying to take control back. This to me is just like a feel-good story. Like, I just love it. Is there anything cuter than old folks like rising up and protesting against stupid, inane restrictions? I just don't think there is. I love this. It makes me so happy to think about it. It makes me think of my grandmother, and, you know, I've thought a lot about, listen, I don't really talk to many members of my family right now for reasons that are probably obvious to all of you, but the other week when I was doing the walkaway rally in Washington, D.C., and I did this, what I thought was probably one of the best speeches I've ever given to this giant crowd of people right in front of the Washington Monument, I couldn't help but think that my grandmother would be pretty proud of me and that she was there with me during that. And so I obviously inherited a lot from her in terms of, you know, doing what I want to do and not letting people tell me no. And, you know, that's probably a lesson that we can learn from many of our elders. All right, guys, that's all I've got for right now. I'll see you soon.